The Obstacle is the Way, by Ryan Holiday. Introduction. Picture a young man, just 16 years old, in Cleveland, Ohio, back in 1855. His name is John D. Rockefeller. He's the son of an alcoholic criminal who abandoned his family, but he's finally found his footing, working as a bookkeeper for 50 cents a day. He celebrates the day he got that job for the rest of his life, calling it Job Day. All is well. And then, the world falls apart. The Panic of 1857 hits. It's a massive financial crisis that starts, of all places, right there in Ohio. Businesses are failing, fortunes are vanishing overnight, and the country is plunging into a crippling depression that will last for years. Now, what do you think a young man in that position would do? Most people would be terrified. They'd run. They'd quit. They'd complain about the unfairness of it all. They'd see a disaster, a dead end, a reason to give up. But Rockefeller saw something else entirely. While everyone else was losing their heads, he kept his. He saw the chaos not as a threat, but as the greatest classroom he could ever ask for. He saw it as an opportunity. A baptism by fire. He watched, he learned, and he saved his money. He saw the weaknesses in the system that others took for granted, and he quietly prepared himself. That single decision, that shift in perspective in the face of a terrifying obstacle, was the foundation upon which he would build one of the greatest fortunes in human history. What you're about to discover is the secret that Rockefeller stumbled upon. It's a secret that has been used by emperors, inventors, presidents, and trailblazers for thousands of years. It's a timeless art, a hidden formula for turning our trials into triumphs, our pain into progress, and our obstacles into the very path forward. By the end of our time together, you won't just understand this ancient philosophy, you'll have a practical three-part framework to apply it to your own life. You will learn how to look at any problem, any setback, any piece of bad luck, and see it not as a barrier, but as a gateway to strength, to wisdom, and to the very success you're chasing. This isn't about wishful thinking. This is about a mental discipline forged in the toughest moments of history. This is about learning that the one thing standing in your way is the way. Book summary. Let's be honest for a moment. Think about that thing in your life right now. That obstacle. That frustrating, unfair, unexpected problem that's blocking you from where you want to go. Maybe it's a person. Maybe it's a situation at school or at home. Maybe it's a doubt deep inside yourself. We're all masters at cataloging what holds us back. I'm too young. I don't have enough money. I don't have the right connections. I'm not smart enough. And what's the result? We freeze. Most of us are paralyzed by our obstacles. We feel fear, frustration, confusion, helplessness. It's like we're boxed in, held down by an invisible force, and we do nothing. We blame the world, we blame other people, or we blame ourselves. But what if I told you that this entire approach is wrong? What if the problem isn't the obstacle itself, but our perception of it? This is the first and most crucial discipline of this entire philosophy. It's an idea that stretches back to the ancient Stoics, a group of Greek and Roman philosophers who were the original masters of resilience. They taught that we don't control what happens to us, but we always control how we respond. The world can throw anything it wants at us, but our mind, our inner world, remains our own. Think of Reuben "Hurricane" Carter, the world-class boxer who, at the peak of his career, was wrongly convicted of a crime he didn't commit and sentenced to 3 life sentences. A staggering, life-shattering injustice. He walked into prison in a tailored suit and a $5,000 diamond ring. Most people would have broken. They would have been consumed by rage, by despair. But Carter, looking the warden in the eye, made a declaration. He said, "You can put my body in this cell, but you will not treat me like a prisoner, because my mind is free." He refused to wear the uniform, eat the prison food, or work to reduce his sentence. He chose not to be harmed by their injustice. Instead, he turned his prison cell into his university. He spent every waking moment reading law books, history, and philosophy. He channeled all his energy into his legal case. He decided that this obstacle, this prison, wouldn't ruin his life, it would improve it. 19 years later, he walked out a free and innocent man, and a better one. He understood the secret. There is the event itself, and then there is the story we tell ourselves about what it means. And we are in complete control of that story. No one can force you to believe a situation is hopeless. No one can make you feel fear. That's a choice. And recognizing that power is the first step to overcoming any obstacle. This power begins with learning to control our emotions and steady our nerves. Think about the astronauts in the early days of the space race. NASA trained them in one skill above all others, the art of not panicking. Because in a tiny capsule, miles above the Earth, panic is a death sentence. When we panic, we make mistakes. We override systems. We stop thinking and just react. So NASA made the astronauts practice every single step of a launch hundreds of times. They simulated every possible disaster. They made the terrifyingly unfamiliar become as routine as breathing. John Glenn, the first American to orbit the Earth, kept his heart rate under 100 beats per minute for nearly a day in space. That's a man in control of his emotions. For us, down here on Earth, life is no different. Obstacles make us emotional. A bad grade, a tough conversation, an unexpected bill, our heart starts racing, our stomach drops. But we have to ask ourselves, does getting upset help? Does it give us more options? The answer is almost always no. Real strength lies in the domestication of our emotions. We can feel them, yes, but we don't have to let them drive. We can say to ourselves, I am in control, not my emotions. I am not going to die from this. Once our emotions are in check, we can practice objectivity. This means seeing things as they are, without the layer of judgment and fear we usually add on top. A samurai swordsman named Miyamoto Musashi once wrote about the difference between the perceiving eye and the observing eye. The perceiving eye is weak, it sees insurmountable problems and terrible setbacks. The observing eye is strong, it sees only what is there. The Stoics had an exercise for this. They would take glamorous things and describe them plainly. That fancy roasted meat? It's a dead animal. That vintage wine? It's old fermented grapes. The point wasn't to be a downer, but to strip away the story and see the reality. We can do this with our obstacles. That promotion you're terrified of not getting? What is it, really? It's a change in title and a bit more money. That person who intimidates you? They are just a person, with their own flaws and fears, just like you. When we remove ourselves, the subjective part, from the equation, the solutions often become crystal clear. Think about it. When a friend comes to you with a problem, you see the answer immediately. Why? Because you're not bogged down in their emotional baggage. You can be objective. So, try this with your own problems. Pretend it's happening to a friend. What advice would you give them? You'd give them clarity, not pity. This leads us to the power of altering our perspective. When we can look at something from a new angle, it loses its power over us. George Clooney spent his early years in Hollywood getting rejected at auditions. He was desperate for the casting directors to like him, to pick him. He saw them as gatekeepers, holding all the power. And he failed, over and over. Then, he flipped his perspective. He realized that casting directors have a problem too. Their problem is that they have an empty role, and they are desperate to find the right person to fill it. The next person who walks in that door could be the solution to their problem. From that day on, Clooney walked into auditions not as a beggar asking for a job, but as the answer to their prayers. He was there to solve their problem. That shift in perspective changed everything. So often, the way we frame a problem is the problem. The head leads the body. The right perception precedes the right action. And a huge part of the right perception is understanding what is and is not up to you. The Stoics had a phrase for this, ta ephemein, ta auk ephemein. What is up to us, and what is not up to us? What's up to us? Our emotions, our judgments, our creativity, our attitude, our decisions, our determination. What's not up to us? Everything else. The weather, the economy, what other people think, luck, life, and death. So many of us waste our energy fighting things we cannot change. We get angry at the traffic. We complain about the rain. We obsess over what someone else thinks of us. This is like a football player arguing with the referee about the rules of the game. It's pointless. The rules are the rules. The wise player focuses on the field, on their own performance, the things they can control. The legendary pitcher Tommy John played for an incredible 26 seasons in the major leagues. He did it because he mastered this distinction. In 1974, he blew out his arm. In those days, that was a career-ending injury. It was called a dead arm, game over. The doctors told him there was an experimental surgery, but the chances of him ever pitching again were 1 in 100. Without it? 0. What did he do? He didn't waste a second bemoaning his bad luck. The injury wasn't up to him. The outcome of the surgery wasn't entirely up to him. But the decision to try, the effort he would put into rehab, that was 100% in his control. He took the 1 in 100 chance, and he won 164 more games. That procedure is now known as Tommy John surgery. Focusing on what is in our power magnifies our power. Every ounce of energy spent on what we can't influence is wasted. The final piece of mastering our perception is to live in the present moment. So often, we're haunted by the past or anxious about the future. But the obstacle in front of us only exists right now. Fortune magazine was launched just 90 days after the 1929 stock market crash. Microsoft was started during a recession. Half of the companies in the Fortune 500 were founded during a bear market. Did their founders know they were in a historically bad time? Maybe. But they were too busy to care. They were too busy dealing with the reality of the present moment, making payroll, improving their product, finding the next customer. They weren't paralyzed by the big picture. They were focused on the next step. The process. This moment is not your life, it is just a moment in your life. Focus on what is in front of you, right now, and the monsters of the past and future will lose their power. Once we've corrected our perception, we have to act. This is the second great discipline. Thinking is not enough. Action is the cure to our predicaments. And there is no better example of this than Demosthenes, the man who would become the greatest orator in all of history. He was born sickly, with a debilitating speech impediment. His father died when he was 7, and the guardians who were meant to protect his inheritance stole it all, leaving him in poverty. He was awkward, weak, and everyone laughed at him. He had every excuse to give up. But he didn't. He was inspired by the image of a great speaker he had once seen, a man who could command a crowd with nothing but his voice. So, he took action. To fix his stutter, he would fill his mouth with pebbles and practice speaking for hours. To strengthen his lungs, he would recite speeches while running up steep hills. To focus on his studies, he built an underground study and shaved half his head so he would be too embarrassed to go outside and get distracted. Every single moment was an opportunity to improve. He channeled all his pain and rage into his training. When he finally came of age, he took his guardians to court. And he won. The money was mostly gone, but it didn't matter. In the process of overcoming his obstacles, he had forged himself into something far more valuable than any inheritance. He had turned his greatest weaknesses into his greatest strengths. When someone asked him for the 3 most important traits of a speaker, he replied, action, action, action. In life, it doesn't matter where you came from. It matters what you do with what you've been given. We trip and fall, and our body instinctively puts out a hand to break the fall. We don't think, we don't complain, we act. But in our day-to-day lives, we forget this. We dither. We wait. We hope someone else will solve our problems. The first step of action is simply to get moving. Start. Anywhere. Anyhow. Amelia Earhart wanted to be a great pilot. But in the 1920s, that was nearly impossible for a woman. She was working as a social worker when the phone rang. The offer was insulting. A funder wanted to sponsor the first female transatlantic flight. But she wouldn't get to fly the plane. 2 men would do that. She wouldn't get paid, though the men would. And, oh, by the way, there was a very real chance she might die. What did she say? She said yes. Because she knew that you don't wait for the perfect opportunity. You take the one you're given and you make it work. Once she got started, she built momentum. Less than 5 years later, she flew solo across the Atlantic and became one of the most famous people in the world. But it never would have happened if she'd turned up her nose at that first, imperfect chance. You have to take the bat off your shoulder and swing. Once you're moving, you have to practice persistence. When General Ulysses S. Grant was trying to capture the Confederate stronghold of Vicksburg, nothing worked. For nearly a year, he tried everything. He attacked head-on. He tried to dig a new canal to change the course of the Mississippi River. He even tried to flood the land and float boats in. Failure after failure. The newspapers called for him to be fired. Lincoln himself sent a replacement to wait in the wings. But Grant refused to be rattled. He knew there was a way. He just hadn't found it yet. His persistence forced him to get creative. He eventually ran his boats right past the city's guns, a move so risky it was considered suicidal, and attacked from a direction no one expected. It was a brilliant, unconventional victory, born not from a flash of genius, but from the slow, grinding pressure of trying everything else first. This is how innovation so often works. Thomas Edison famously tested 6,000 different filaments for the light bulb before he found one that worked. When a rival sneered that Edison's method was just examining straw after straw in a haystack, he missed the point. Sometimes, that is exactly the method. Persistence is the rule, not the exception. The genius is in the unity of purpose, the deafness to doubt, the desire to stay at it. As you persist, you have to iterate. You have to learn from your failures. In Silicon Valley, they talk about the minimum viable product. You don't spend years building a perfect product in secret. You release the most basic version of your idea, see how people react, and then you learn and adapt. Failure is not a bug, it's a feature. It's feedback. It shows you the way by showing you what isn't the way. When you fail, ask, what went wrong here? What can be improved? What am I missing? Failure puts you in a corner you have to think your way out of. It's the source of breakthroughs. The only way to guarantee that failure is a bad thing is to not learn from it. As you're iterating and persisting, you must follow the process. This is the secret of Nick Saban, the legendary coach of the University of Alabama football team. He built one of the greatest dynasties in sports history with 2 simple words, the process. He tells his players, don't think about winning the championship. Think about what you need to do in this drill, on this play, in this moment. That's the process. The process breaks down overwhelming goals into manageable steps. Excellence is a matter of steps. Excelling at this one, then the next one, then the one after that. When we get trapped under a heavy weight, our first instinct is to push with all our might. But that just exhausts us. The process is about conserving energy, creating a little space, and then, step by step, dismantling the thing that's holding us down. We are A to Z thinkers, obsessing about A and Z but forgetting all about B through Y. The process is our guide through those middle steps. It's the voice that says, shut up. Do your job. Focus on what's right in front of you. And what is your job? It's to do it right. Whatever it is. Andrew Johnson, before he was president, was a tailor. He took immense pride in his work, saying, my garments never ripped or gave way. James Garfield paid his way through college by being a janitor, and he did it with a smile, better than anyone else. Within a year, he was a professor at that same school. Everything we do matters. There is no task that is beneath us. Everything is a chance to do and be our best. How you do anything is how you do everything. When we see our work this way, not as a burden but as a craft, vanity falls away. All that is left is the work itself. Finally, action must be pragmatic. What's right is what works. In the early 1900s, two rival fruit companies were fighting over a valuable piece of land in the jungle. The problem was, two different locals both claimed to own it. The giant corporation, United Fruit, dispatched a team of high-powered lawyers to search through every document in the country to find the rightful owner. They were going to do it the right way. Their smaller, scrappier competitor, owned by a man named Samuel Zamiri, took a different approach. He didn't have time for the rulebook. He just went and bought the land from both claimants. He paid twice, sure, but the land was his. The problem was solved. Pragmatism is not about being perfect, it's about getting the job done. It doesn't matter if the cat is black or white, so long as it catches mice. We spend so much time looking for the perfect solution that we miss the good enough one that's right in front of us. Think progress, not perfection. So, you've mastered your perception. You're taking deliberate, persistent action. But what happens when that's not enough? What happens when you face an obstacle so large, so powerful, that you simply cannot overcome it? This is where the third, and perhaps most difficult, discipline comes in: the will. If perception is the discipline of the mind and action is the discipline of the body, then will is the discipline of the heart and soul. It's our internal power, our final trump card, the one thing that can never be affected by the outside world. No one embodies this more than Abraham Lincoln. He battled a crippling depression his entire life, what was then called melancholy. It was a darkness that nearly drove him to suicide. But his journey through that personal suffering forged in him the exact qualities the nation would need to endure its own darkest hour, the Civil War. His own pain gave him immense compassion for the pain of others. He was patient because he knew that difficult things took time. He couldn't be tempted by petty arguments because he was wrestling with bigger demons. He found purpose in a cause larger than his own personal struggles. His favorite saying was, "This too shall pass." He had built a strong inner fortress, an inner citadel, that no external chaos could breach. We are not born with this fortress. It must be built. We build it in the good times so that we can depend on it in the bad times. Theodore Roosevelt was born a frail, asthmatic child. His father told him, "You have the mind, but you do not have the body. I am giving you the tools to make your body." And for the next 5 years, young Roosevelt worked out feverishly, building muscle, strengthening his lungs, forging himself into the robust, strenuous man he would become. He was preparing his inner citadel. He was hardening himself for the difficulties he knew life would throw at him. Part of building this will is anticipation, what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It's thinking negatively. It's a CEO gathering her team before a big launch and saying, "The project has failed spectacularly. Tell me what went wrong." It's an exercise in hindsight, in advance. It forces you to consider what could go wrong, to probe for weaknesses in your plan, and to have a backup. It's hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. The person who has rehearsed disaster in their mind will not be caught by surprise. They will not panic. They will be ready. But sometimes, even with preparation, the worst happens. Something outside of our control breaks our plans, our hopes, our hearts. And in that moment, when action is no longer possible, we have only one choice: the art of acquiescence. Acceptance. This is not giving up. It's for the things that are immune to action. We don't have to like it, but we must accept it. The shot didn't go in. The deal fell through. The relationship ended. Fighting it is like taking traffic signals personally. It's insane. It doesn't change anything. Acceptance allows us to conserve our energy for the things we can change. We stop kicking and fighting, and we come to terms with reality. As the saying goes, man proposes, God disposes. We can't control the hand we're dealt, only how we play it. And the final, highest expression of the will goes even beyond acceptance. It is what the philosopher Nietzsche called amor fati, a love of fate. Not just to bear what is necessary, but to love it. At age 67, Thomas Edison was at home when a man rushed in with terrible news: his entire research campus was on fire. Fueled by chemicals, the flames shot 7 stories into the air, destroying a lifetime of work. Priceless records, prototypes, and research, all turning to ash. Edison arrived at the scene, and the first thing he did was find his son. With childlike excitement, he said, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." When his son looked at him, stunned, Edison calmly added, "It's all right. We've just got rid of a lot of rubbish." What an incredible reaction. But what else could he do? Weep? Get angry? That would accomplish nothing. Instead, he chose to see it as a spectacle, a cleansing, a fresh start. He wasn't too old, he told a reporter the next day. He'd been through things like this before. Within 3 weeks, the factory was partially running again. That year, he made nearly $10 million in revenue. This is amor fati. It's the decision to not just be okay with what happens, but to feel great about it. Because if it happened, then it was meant to happen, and it's an opportunity to practice some virtue, courage, creativity, resilience. It's turning what we must do into what we get to do. It's all fuel. And we shouldn't just tolerate fuel, we should be grateful for it. We can't go anywhere without it. This journey of overcoming obstacles never ends. Behind mountains are more mountains. Each time we break through one, we learn something, we gain strength, and we become worthy of a bigger challenge. Life is a process of breaking through one fortified line after another. And all that is left at the end is the best version of you. See things for what they are. Do what you can. Endure and bear what you must. This is the timeless art. What blocked the path is now the path. What once impeded action now advances action. The obstacle is the way. Commentary. As we wrap up our journey through The Obstacle is the Way, it's impossible not to feel the weight and wisdom of this ancient philosophy. In a world that feels increasingly chaotic, distracting, and overwhelming, the teachings of the Stoics, brought to life by Ryan Holiday, feel more urgent and necessary than ever. This isn't a book about motivational platitudes or blind optimism. It's a practical, real-world operating system for navigating the difficulties of life. The 3-part framework, perception, action, and will, is so powerful because it's a closed loop. Our clear perceptions guide our right actions. Our actions build and reinforce our unbreakable will. And our will, in turn, gives us the strength to manage our perceptions, no matter what happens. What strikes me most is how this philosophy empowers us. It takes us from being a victim of our circumstances to being the architect of our responses. It reminds us that while we may not control the events of our lives, we have sovereignty over our inner world. And in the end, that's the only thing that truly matters. The stories of Rockefeller, Lincoln, Edison, and so many others aren't just historical anecdotes, they are proof that this system works. They are evidence that the greatest among us are not those who are untouched by adversity, but those who are transformed by it. So, how can you start applying this in your own life, today? Here are a few simple, practical actions. First, practice objective journaling. The next time you face a setback, big or small, take out a piece of paper. On one side, write down exactly what happened, as if you were a reporter stating only the facts. On the other side, write down the stories, emotions, and judgments you've attached to that event. This simple act of separation is the first step to mastering your perception. You'll begin to see the gap between reality and your interpretation of it. Second, find your process. Pick one big goal that feels overwhelming. Instead of thinking about the end result, break it down into the smallest, most immediate step you can take right now. Is your obstacle writing a big essay? Your process is to write one good sentence. Just one. Then another. Forget the finish line. Fall in love with the process of taking the next step. Finally, conduct a pre-mortem. Think of something you have coming up this week: a test, a game, a difficult conversation. Spend 5 minutes imagining it has gone completely wrong. What happened? Why did it happen? How could you have prepared for it? By anticipating failure, you strip it of its power to surprise and derail you. You become prepared, not paranoid. That was our deep dive into The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. We've explored the core ideas today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only scratch the surface. The real transformation happens when you let these ideas sink in, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with a challenge in your own life. This summary is your starting point, a map to see if this journey is one you want to take. If anything we've talked about has resonated with you, I truly encourage you to grab a copy of the book. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can fundamentally change the way you face every single day. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring the books that shape the world's most successful people, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.